Hello again, this is Bill Jones with recapturefederalism.com, coming you today again from Freedom's Nest, and this is just one freedom nest in this country. You'll find freedom nests all over this country. Wherever you find free men and women, you'll find Freedom's Nest. And we're coming today, we're talking about communism again. And we're going to talk about the Chicago Tribune communist propaganda. That's right. And why do I say that? You know, it goes back to when I was in Vietnam, over in Tonkin Gulf, 1969. My mother got me a subscription and a program, nice program, sent the paper over. Yeah, it's communist propaganda then, and as it is now. First thing we're going to do, like we always do, and get my stuff here. Take care of administrative stuff right away. I, William R. Jones, do solemnly swear and affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, so help me God. And as I tell everybody, I do this every presentation or mini documentary, whatever it happens to be. I took that oath July 1965. The enemy then was communism, and the enemy now is communism, and even more so. And it turns out at that time the Tribune was already commie pimping media, and I realized it when I was over in the Tonkin Gulf. We conducted combat operations in Southeast Asia. They lied. They had fraudulent misrepresentations, pro-communist. And pro-communist fraudulent misrepresentations all along this time, ever since then. And just the way it is. I'll write this stuff here, the guidelines. That's the tactics and strategies of the communist parties worldwide, global, worldwide. And that's what we have. It's what we have going on. And we have that. There's two things that they, in the Communist Manifesto, it's core to what they do, and I read that every time also, and that usually when I post something on YouTube and Vimeo, and also my site, I put quotes in there, and these two quotes are always there because it is the core of world communism. And the quotes, here they are from page 26 of the Communist Manifesto. There are, besides eternal truths such as freedom, justice, etc. I always throw in liberty there. They're not, liberty and freedom are not identical, okay? That are common to all states of society. But communism abolishes eternal truth and abolishes all religion and all morality instead of constituting them on a new basis. It therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience. Page 26 of the Communist Manifesto, and as I say when I read that, the historical experience with communism, world communism, is death, enslavement, re-education, communist propaganda. And that's what you have with the Tribune. And the other quote that I always use, and listen to this carefully, the communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling classes tremble at the communistic revolution. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries, unite. Unite, that's right. Page 34, Communist Manifesto. You notice the ruling classes. That's in America. That's we the people. You're supposed to be trembling. Got the commies here now. Of course, they don't say they're commies. They say they're progressives and all that kind this stuff. And when I say commies, I do a disclaimer. That includes any totalism or totalitarianism groups, progressives, socialists, communists, Marxists, Nazis, all those things. And even some of like white supremacy, that's included too. Ku Klux Klan, they're part of that totalitarian type of thing, and it's all part of that. The biggest thing, of course, is a communist, because that's what they call themselves. Now, a disclaimer. Have we got to this point here, however long it's been? Look, if you think I'm going to be offending you with something I say, leave now, please. Turn me off. Don't listen to it. Because if you're offended by being called a communist, or indications that you're a communist, or totalitarianist, ISIS, CARE Group, Southern Poverty Law Center, any of you people, if you're going to feel offended, don't bother listening. This is the beauty of America and the beauty of free speech. We can talk about things, and sometimes it offends people. Okay? Don't listen. Or counter with a verbal argument, non-violent reaction. Okay? But I'll just save you trouble. You don't want to hear something I say because you think you're going to be offended? Turn me off. Right now, you can turn me off. And we will progress now with talking about the Tribune. And the reason I'm doing this, I guess it's a week ago or so, on a Sunday in the paper, because they have the big articles on Sunday, in the Tribune with the communist propaganda. And this article is from Sunday, September 20th, 2015, so you get an idea of the time frame here. And I've been thinking about it, doing some research, and as I always am, and I was going to do it last week, and I'm glad I held off because I get some other information and what have you. I had pretty much all the stuff I need by then, but they had an article. Okay, there it is, article. I'm not drawing this, picking this out of thin air or nothing. There it is, right here, paper. And the title of the article, of course, they start out, they have a little thing here. It's not the title, but the Tribune Special Report, Chicago under the gun. Here we go. Communist propaganda. Gun control is anti-Christian, it's anti-religion, it's anti-Judaism, anti-Semitic, anti-Christian, and they always bring it up. Just as I read before, this is part of their deal. We've had the right to bear arms in this country from day one, from at Lexington and Concord. We had gun control. The King George was trying to take the guns away. That's what started the actual revolution and the American Revolution. And right away they bring up under gun, because that's the agenda of communism around the world. Everybody's having their guns pulled away. You don't give up your guns. Whatever you do, buddy, don't give up your guns. Now, for 2 decades, and this is what they say, I'm quoting there, for 2 decades, New York and Los Angeles dramatically curbed violent crime, even as it continued to plague Chicago, a much smaller city. Oh yeah? 2 Tribune reporters traveled to the coast to see how it was done. First of all, Chicago's a much smaller city, known as the second city. So here are 3 cities are mentioned. It's been known historically as the second city. We have a common group second city here. They're telling you it's much smaller, which is a lie, a communist lie. It's called a distraction or deflection. They're very good at that. And that's right, all this stuff right here. I got this stuff here on the board. Propaganda and agitation, democratic centralism, communist obligation to do work. That's where you get community organizers, communist community organizers in there. But then we have the party press over here. That's what I'm talking about. And of course, this is from 1921, so they just had the press there in 1921. And it's now, it includes the media also. Okay? Now, the title, Why LA and New York City, or NYC, have far fewer homicides. Okay? There it is. The premise starts out, and the premise is wrong. First of all, the violence in Chicago is a separate issue from anywhere else in the country. The violence in Chicago is because of Chicago. The violence in New York is because of violence in New York. The violence in LA is the violence in LA. There's some similarities, but they're not the same, and I'll cover that. Because they talk about it too, that there's some difference. Sure, that's what they're doing. And here they got it. They started on summer, and how many killed, and LA, how many killed. When you're talking about violence and the death in Chicago, let's just keep it to Chicago. Then they go in, but in Chicago, cities whose population is dwarfed by both major coastal cities. That's not true. They're relatively, roughly the same size and same population. What difference does it make? However many people are getting killed in Chicago, it's because they're killed in Chicago and the problem's in Chicago. And I'm going to talk about that. I will bring that up. But they want to deflect it. Like if we just copy what they do in New York or LA. That isn't the case. They talk about, oh yeah, down here about the 4th or 5th paragraph. Meanwhile, unlike in Chicago's segregated neighborhoods on the south and west side, many of New York communities, stop the press, stop the press, stop the press. They're going to talk about Chicago's segregated neighborhoods. And there you're going to go to communist propaganda and agitation. Chicago's neighborhood, and I'm 70 years old, born in Chicago, in the same neighborhood where the president has his residence, in the same neighborhood that Jesse Jackson lives, in the same neighborhood where the neighborhood used to be the headquarters of the Nation of Islam, going back into the mid-50s. Remember walking down the street, I was about 10 years old, about 1955, and I said, Ma, who are those people? Who are those people? The way they're dressed and what have you. And she said, well, that's their religion. Okay, that's the religion. It was an integrated neighborhood. Okay, didn't stop me from being discriminated later on because I was a white boy, but it's integrated. I lived in that neighborhood the first 12 years of my life. So the president's got his residence there, this and that. It was integrated back then. Then there was a lot of neighborhoods around there, and what they started doing, a communist program, democratic centralism. In 1949, the Federal Housing Act, a communist program, communist departments, communist agencies, they started urban renewal. In those areas which were heavy-duty poor and heavy-duty African-American. So in those communities, they had the minorities, the poor and the Negroes, and that's what they were called then, Negroes. We had difference. There's only one race. Let's get that right on the thing right off the bat. There's only one race, Homo sapiens. Okay, God created Homo sapiens. There's different classifications of that. I learned that in high school in 1962. That was before the communists come along and came out with these. The language of the minorities is what they call that, and that's in the obligation to do work. And in the propaganda and agitation, they talk, I think it's the propaganda and agitation where it's at. They talk about that, the language of the minorities. That's how they expand expand communism. They talk the language. And so they changed Negro, Jesse Jackson, and then the other leaders of the communist communities changed and came up with these newfangled labels. No longer Negro. You can't say in the political correctness. That's re-education, thought control. You no longer can say Negro. You have to say black. You cannot no longer say homosexual. You have to say gay. And suddenly we have rights. We don't have human rights for everybody. We just have communist civil rights for selected minorities that the communists decide are going to be protected groups. So we have protected groups. That's where that come into. We're not supposed to have protected groups in this country. We're all supposed to be equal. Under the Constitution and the laws of this country, we're all equal. We all have the same basic human rights. But no, the communists come along and they say, no, we got to have. That's all this communist propaganda and agitation. And the party press, they go along with it. They push the stuff. They're the ones that pushed it. And they'd rather say gay than homosexual because homosexual is a big word, you know. It's a big word. Big word, yeah. And we reduce it to gay. G-A-Y, 3 letters. The same way I say totalitarianism, which is 15 letters, commie, 6 letters. It's better on the palate in the title, you know? So they come along with that. And that's Jesse Jackson and the other community organizers in Chicago, the communist community organizers, they're the ones, when the people were moved out of those neighborhoods, and then especially in the mid-60s and later on, they moved out, and as they moved out, they moved into these, which were predominantly white neighborhoods. Some of them were integrated, some of them weren't integrated, some whatever, over the years. It's the way it was. Some of them go prior back to the Negro migration from down south. And how did that happen? That was around because of labor conflict. Gustav Swift went over to the Chicago Defender newspaper and talked to George Abbott, who was the publisher and owner of the Chicago Defender newspaper, put ads in the paper. He was having trouble with unions, so he's going to get union breakers, and he got union breakers from down south, the Negroes down south, bring them up to Chicago. They brought them up to Detroit, over for Detroit too, for the auto industry, but to Chicago and for the stockyards. Gustav Swift and Armour and those other big wigs with their owning the meat packing companies, they went down there. And down south, the Democrats down south just love that, because we're going to get rid of the Negroes. We're going to send them up north. Get rid of them. They pushed the newspaper down there. They told George Abbott, bring your paper down. You would just sell them all over the place down here to the Negroes. Have at it. And he was welcome down there. They didn't care that it had nothing to do with race anyway. It had a matter of economics. That's the way it is. So they moved up. They moved up to Chicago, and that's where they were around the stockyards area. On the east side was mostly minorities, blacks. And in the back of the yards was mostly whites. Then later on, they have a lot of the Europeans come in, and they were in their own areas too, because people associate with their own. It's not that they hate other people, they just associate with their own. So what happened, we had the Federal Housing Act and urban renewal. We moved, and that's how I happened to move out, family happened to move out of Hyde Park. Hyde Park, that's the neighborhood, that's where the president has his residency, that's where Jesse Jackson is now. I was back there in 1957, 58. We had to move out of that neighborhood because where we were at, they were tearing that building down. And we ended up moving over by Marquette Park. Lived there for 4 years, then out in the suburbs. But anyway, people had to move out of certain areas. And they moved to other areas where they could get available housing. And there was no public housing yet, so there's whatever housing. And they went into some of these neighborhoods. And I'll give you an anecdotal story. Back in the 70s, back from Vietnam, I worked for General Motors, Electric Motor Division, General Motors. I was there. I was in the union, and for a while I was a foreman and all this kind of stuff. One day I'm talking with a guy, and a job I had, expediter for parts and production and material control, and I'd go around these different departments. I'd talk to some of the foremen in the different departments, and I'd talk to some of the workers. I need some parts. Hi, how you doing, Joe? How you doing? All that kind of stuff, you know. Smoozing so I could get my stuff. And one day I go into this neighborhood, or into this department. Machine operator's there, he's all distressed. I said, wow, man, what's happening? And he said, you know, he's a Polish American. And his older mother, Polish, lived all her life in Roseland neighborhood. And the minorities moved in. The African Americans moved in. The blacks moved into that neighborhood. They're no longer Negroes. They're blacks. And she was one, this is in the 70s, mid-70s. And she is all upset. She got visited by some of the people on the block there, and they says, hey, old white lady, when you moving out of our neighborhood? This is our neighborhood. We don't want no more white people in here. Out of here. But Jesse Jackson went around and told the whole country it was white flight. That's why it's all minorities. Communist propaganda. It's a lie. It's a lie. People were pushed out. And then when they did, they ended up building the Robert Taylor Homes, Cabrini Greens, and all these other ones. Huge complexes. First of all, the people that made all the money were the politically connected building corporations. You know, I can name them off too. That's all part of the communist racketeering. You know, a select few make a lot of money and that type of thing with the FHA. When they built these things, Robert Taylor Homes ended up, at first, the people had to fill out applications, and they got people in who were legitimately in need of help and housing, and they were good people. And they selected them to live there and help them out and all that kind of stuff. And I suppose there were good parts of that program. But what happened? Gangbangers laid on. Now, this is all the problem you're going to have right now when I start talking about the segregation. Gangs. There were gangs before the segregation, but they boomed after the segregation, because if you really want to know the truth, those gangs are communist troops for Jesse Jackson and the other communist community organizers. That's what they are, and I'm going to get into that. The Tribune, they're not going to tell you this, okay? They don't ever report this stuff. They don't report this about the segregation, and this is, now I'm going to tell you what they don't report. If you, it's funny, if you ever read these stories, look back at them, and they have these kids get killed, beautiful little children. Wow. One gang shooting at the other gang, and the beautiful child, they don't know how to shoot to start out with, and they're shooting all over the place. If you want to go on YouTube, you can see some of the Wild 100s, this neighborhood, that's out near the Roseland area. You can watch them. These guys are waving guns out on the streets and everything else. Well, these beautiful little children get shot. Innocent people get shot. Victims of crime, burglaries and muggings on the street. Drug deals gone bad because that's the primary business of the gangs, okay? It's gang related. You ever read it? It's a little Susie was shot. She got in the way of a stray bullet from a gang-related. How many times? You ask anybody from Chicago that reads these papers, it's gang-related. Yes, gang-related, and I'm going to tell you why. Because there's a multitude of gangs. And you ask, well, why don't they get rid of? They don't enforce the law. There's laws. I'm going to tell you about it. I got it right in front of me. There's a civil law and there's a criminal law. I'm going to go criminal first. An act concerning criminal law. It is 720 in the Illinois compiled statutes. 720 is the criminal code. Article 33G. It is called the Illinois Street Gang and Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Law. RICO. It's a short title. May be cited as the Illinois Street Gang, Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Corporations Law, or RICO. State RICO law. Does anybody ever hear about them enforcing this particular law? They don't even enforce the guys waving the guns on the street anymore, because Jesse Jackson every few months marches into Chicago. He hasn't here lately in the last year or so. I think he's getting old and he's retired or something. He's made so much money he can just lean back, you know. Anyway, they don't enforce the law. And here it is. I'm going to read this one paragraph here. 720 ILCS 5/33G2 new, and it has that number, and it's the section 33G-2 legislative declaration. The substantial harm inflicted on the people and economy of this state by pervasive violent gangs and other forms of enterprise criminality is legitimately a matter of grave concern to the people of this state, who have a basic right to be protected from that criminal activity and to be given adequate remedies to redress its harms. Get it right. Whereas the current laws of the state provide inadequate remedies, procedures, and punishments, the Illinois General Assembly hereby gives a supplemental remedies of the Illinois Street Gang and Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Law full force and effect under law for the common good of this state and its people. You want to stop the killing of people in Chicago, enforce the law, okay? The gun laws, they're not supposed to have guns, they're criminals. The gun laws, this criminal law and act, okay? That's the criminal part. You can go to jail for this stuff. It's felonies, okay? And when you get into murder, it's supposed to be a capital. Of course, we don't have capital anymore because the executive pen of Governor Ryan. Yeah, that's the governor. The governor went to jail because he was corrupt, okay? Governor Rauner, reinstitute the death penalty. Thank you. Reinstitute it. I talked to you. I met you a couple weeks ago at a township Republican picnic. Not that I belong to that organization, but I knew you'd be there. And I had the opportunity to shake your hand. And I mentioned about the gangs, didn't I? Yeah. I didn't mention that you should reinstate the death penalty, but you should. I got a nod. Oh, yeah. Nothing's going to happen, because nothing has happened with this law. Now, that's the criminal side. You don't see that in the Tribune now, do you? No, it wasn't in that article. Where's this article? Nothing in the article about that law or this other law I'm going to read. You got another law. You know the street gangs are terrorists? They're domestic terrorists. You didn't mention that in the paper now, did you? I should give credit to the to the writers of this. Annie Sweeney, she went out to L.A., and Jeremy Gorner, both in the Tribune. They've been writers for a while here in Chicago. I suppose they're real nice people and everything. And of course, they work for the Tribune. The editors are going to decide what goes in the paper and how you write it and everything. So they're just doing their job. And the writing's all right. The journalism is all right. It's inaccurate and a fraudulent misrepresentation because the Tribune wants it that way, and they have wanted that way since 1965. Okay? And I knew that, of course, in 69 when I was over in the Tonkin Gulf. So they didn't report anything on the criminal stuff. You don't ever see any stories about that. And now here, terrorist. Did you say terrorist? I said, yes, I did. I did say terrorist. And why did I say that? Did I pull that out of the sky? No, I did not pull it out of the sky. We've got 740 Illinois compiled statutes, 147/1, and it is Section 1, short title. This article may be cited as the Illinois Street Gang Terrorism Omnibus Prevention Act. What did you just say? What did you just say? Did you say terrorism? Street gang terrorism? Yeah, they're domestic terrorists. It says so right here. I'm gonna read this. And I don't like reading this stuff, but I find myself having to read this stuff because I'm not making this stuff up. And if I don't read it, you're not even going to know about it because the free press ain't going to tell you it's because they're not free press. They're commie pimping media. That's what they are. And here we go. And the source is Public Act 87-932. And it's the 740 Illinois Compiled Statute 147/5, Section 5, legislative findings. This is the findings I found. Now, it's 4 paragraphs. Bear with me, because you're going to love this stuff. This is all about why there's the crime rate and the murder rate so high in Chicago. Right here, we're going to tell you all about it. Okay? So just bear with me. Paragraph A, the General Assembly hereby finds and declares that it is the right of every person, regardless of race, color, creed, religion, national origin, sex, age, or disability, to be secure and protected from fear, intimidation, and physical harm caused by the activities of violent groups and individuals. It is not the intent of this act to interfere with the exercise of the constitutionally protected rights of freedom of expression and association. The General Assembly hereby recognizes the constitutional right of every citizen to harbor and express beliefs on any lawful subject whatsoever, to lawfully associate with others who share similar beliefs, to petition lawfully constituted authority for the redress of perceived grievances, and to participate in the electoral process. Wow, that's a whole bunch of words. Make me cough. You heard me, didn't you? That's why we have people getting killed. Tribune, Chicago Tribune, Annie, Jeremy. That's why we have people getting killed. Okay? That's why. That's the legislative findings. I believe it's 2012. But that was just the first paragraph. Did you think I was reading all 4 of them already? No, that's just the first paragraph. We'll go to the second paragraph. You'll like this one too. The General Assembly finds, however, that urban, suburban, and rural communities, neighborhoods, and schools throughout the state are being terrorized and plundered by street gangs. The General Assembly finds that there are now several hundred street gangs operating in Illinois, that while their terrorism is most widespread in urban areas, street gangs are spreading in the suburban and rural areas of Illinois. Wow. Being terrorized and plundered by street gangs. I wonder if they're saying that about New York and L.A. I doubt it. They got gangs out there too. Out in L.A. they got the Crips and the Bloods, and I'm sure in New York they do too. They're all over. But they're different gangs. They're special here in Chicago because these gangs have been protected and supported by political party supremacy, the Democrats, for decades, okay? And it's spread. This is why us honest, law-abiding citizens who have no criminal record whatsoever need to have arms in their home and to have concealed carry on the street, because it's gotten that bad because we're being terrorized and plundered by street gangs. Well, that was paragraph B. Wasn't that wonderful? Here, let's continue. Paragraph C. The General Assembly further finds that street gangs are often controlled by criminally sophisticated adults who take advantage of our youth by intimidating and coercing them into membership, by employing them as drug couriers and runners, and by using them to commit brutal crimes against person and property to further the financial benefit to and dominance of the street gangs. And the political party supremacy, by the way, it's all part of that, because the Democratic Party is a communist party, and it's all part of that communist racketeering. I mentioned its groups. Yeah, political parties in the United States do not have a legal basis or authority to operate, and they are very bluntly criminal enterprises. Okay, and I can go and I'll make that argument all day and all night, but that's not the subject today. We're talking about murders in Chicago and street gangs, because that's the cause, the majority of them. If you were to get rid of street gang related violence, you'd have a pretty nice town here, like it used to be. Now in the last paragraph of this legislative finding, which is D, these street gangs' activities present a clear and present danger to public order and safety and are not constitutionally protected. No society is or should be required to endure such activities without redress. Accordingly, it is the intent of the General Assembly, by enacting this act, to create a civil remedy against street gangs and their members that focuses upon patterns of criminal gang activity and upon organized nature of street gangs, which together have been the chief source of their success. What was that article about? It had nothing to do with the truth. It all had to do with communism, which is not being reported, and it's the communist propaganda and agitation. So that's in a nutshell. Citizens, fellow citizens, if you want to do anything, you need to be talking to these politicians, who, by the way, are criminals themselves because they are violating a law. There's a law, and I'll get into it sometime. Official misconduct in the state of Illinois is punishable by 7 years in prison and removal from office. They're not enforcing the law, gang, okay? And that's against the law also. It's all part of this communist pattern, which has been going on in Illinois. It's been going on since 1886. I'll get into that time. It's part of the insurrection, the silent, secret insurrection and revolutionary movement. Been going on for 129 years in Illinois and around the country too, everywhere. It started in Illinois, in Chicago. Now that's where we're at with this, and with that I will sign off today. Just to let you know, if you would like to hear more, you come to my website, recapturefederalism.com, trying to get it in order. I always laugh about the difficulties I have because my staff, they're incompetent. Oh, wait a minute, I don't have a staff. It's just me, gang, and I'm doing the best I can with what I got, and we're moving forward. We're going to continue on. We're getting our page going, and we're going to be doing some series of documentaries, and it'll be going on to our page, which is titled The American Communist Theocracy, The Great Tribulation and Confidence Game. That's what it's all about, gang, and we're going to be doing that in the future. And those, we will have those documentaries. I'm an indie producer and narrator, however good that is. And we'll be selling those probably on Amazon out in the future sometime as we progress. But put the stuff, we put it on YouTube, Vimeo. We're going to be putting it up more on Direct Motion, I think it is. And we're going to be doing that later on. So until the next time, Bill Jones with recapturefederalism.com, speaking to you again from Freedom's Nest. Good day.